So it's time for a little fun. This one's for me. So I'm trying to justify the vastness of space and the grand heavens seen by the James Webb Space Telescope. I'm trying to justify the myriad of evidence surrounding visitors from off our planet, especially told by the narrative of the Jesse Michaels podcast and Richard Doty stories, etc. I'm trying to justify the man imprinted on the shroud and the father he tells us about. I'm trying to justify the ancient stone carvings of the handbags the ancient alien theorists postulate about. I know that we're all bodies connected to a soul, and that near-death experiences tell of a reality beyond ours where, according to stories told by those experiencing them, Jesus greets folks no matter their religion. Who is this God that sent his son down to earth? So let's go through this slowly and carefully, not as apologetics and not as a dismissal of any of the data that we're holding. We're not asking, is Christianity true? We're asking, what kind of God would create this universe and this evidence, and then step into it as Jesus? That's a much deeper and more honest question. The vastness of the heavens is not a problem for the Christian God. It is his signature. James Webb Space Telescope didn't shrink God. It ended the small God problem. Ancient people already believed the heavens were vast. Psalm 19, Job 38 through 41, Isaiah 40. But now we see it. The key mistake is assuming if the universe is enormous, humans must be insignificant. That logic only holds if God is resource limited. God values efficiency over meaning. God creates only what he uses directly. The God revealed in the scripture is none of those things. He creates lavishly, not minimally. A universe 93 billion light years across does not exist for transport. It exists as a stage, a revelation, and a declaration. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Not the usefulness of his hands, the character of them. The size tells you something about who he is. Unbounded, non-utilitarian, creative beyond necessity. This already rules out a cold deist architect. Visitors, UAPs, and intelligence beyond Earth do not negate Christianity. They actually fit it disturbingly well. Here is something most people won't say plainly. The Bible never claims humans are the only intelligent beings God created. In fact, it repeatedly assumes the opposite: sons of God, thrones, dominions, powers, principalities, watchers, hosts of heaven. Christianity is not anthropocentric, it is Christocentric. If there are non-human intelligences, some are benevolent, some deceptive, some interact with humanity covertly, some manipulate perception and narrative, then the biblical worldview fits better, not worse, than materialism. Richard Doty's amazing stories matter not because every claim is true, but because the phenomenon itself resists reduction. Jesse Michaels' guests keep circling around the same thing: intelligence that is real, non-human, technological and/or immaterial, and morally ambiguous. That is exactly what Christianity predicts in a fallen cosmos. The Bible does not say Earth is the center of everything. It says Earth is where God chose to intervene personally. Those are radically different claims. The shroud is not a magic trick. It's a theological object in physical form. The shroud is not compelling because it's mysterious. It's compelling because it does something no forger would do. No pigment, no brushwork, no image beneath the fibers. Encodes 3D information, corresponds anatomically to Roman crucifixion, displays radiation-like superficiality without burning. But here's the deeper part. The image is not triumphant, it's humiliated. A forger trying to invent God would not choose a scourged Jewish peasant, executed as a criminal, naked, broken, imprinted in death. If God wanted to prove himself by power, this is the worst possible method, unless power was not the point. Ancient carvings, handbags, and the error of misidentifying symbolism. The so-called handbags appear across cultures because humans reuse symbolic language. What they actually represent is far less exotic. Containers of life, sacred knowledge, ritual implements, authority to mediate between realms. Ancient people did not think in terms of technology versus myth. That's a modern split. But here's the key. Christianity never claims all ancient religions were fabrications. It claims they were fractured memories, partial revelations, and distorted encounters. The Bible even names this. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie. Not invented, exchanged. Near-death experiences are not Christian propaganda, and that matters. Near-death experiences are uncomfortable for both skeptics and religious gatekeepers. Patterns emerge. Consciousness independent of the body. Moral evaluation centered on love, not tribal identity. A being of overwhelming presence and compassion. Jesus appearing to those who did not expect him. This does not mean all religions are the same. It suggests something far more radical. God is not impressed by labels, but he is deeply concerned with response to truth. Jesus himself said, I have other sheep that are not of this fold. That line is rarely taken seriously. So who is this God, really? Here's the thread that unifies everything that we listed. A universe too large to be utilitarian. Intelligence beyond humanity. A God who allows ambiguity rather than forcing belief. A son who enters suffering instead of avoiding it. A moral reality that transcends culture. A love that appears even at death. This is not the God of control. This is the God of self-giving restraint. Christianity's most shocking claim is not God exists. It is this. God chose vulnerability over dominance. The incarnation is not about power, it's about trust. God does not overwhelm the universe into submission, he invites it into relationship. That is why evidence is sufficient but not coercive. The universe is vast but personal. Truth is present but contestable. Love is offered but never forced. Why send the Son at all? Because information does not save. Presence does. You don't redeem a broken creation by issuing commands from outside it. You enter it. You suffer within it. You take its violence into yourself. The cross is not a transaction, it is a revelation. It says, this is who God is when he meets evil. Not domination, not annihilation, but absorption and transformation. The God who sent his Son is not threatened by cosmic scale, not rivaled by other intelligences, not hiding from scrutiny, not addicted to control, not impressed by religion, not absent from suffering. He is the ground of being, choosing to be known personally, the architect who stepped onto his own scaffolding, the infinite who accepted finitude, the judge who became the judged. And Jesus is not a symbol pointing upward. He is the answer walking toward us. Every moment that biological life is lived, it glorifies his nature. And the reason that sentence feels true rather than poetic is because it aligns with the deepest structure of Christian metaphysics. Let's ground it carefully. Life glorifies God by being, not by performing. In Christianity, creation does not glorify God by flattery, ritual, or usefulness. It glorifies him by existing according to its nature. A star glorifies God by burning. A tree glorifies God by growing. An animal glorifies God by living as an animal. Biological life, metabolizing, repairing, reproducing, adapting, is a continuous act of received existence. That matters, because the Christian God is not sustained by worship. He is revealed by life sustained. In him we live and move and have our being. This is not metaphorical language, it's ontological. Why biological life matters in particular. Life is not just matter in motion, it is matter participating in intention. Every living cell maintains internal order against entropy, repairs damage, seeks sustenance, responds meaningly to its environment. This is not consciousness, but it is prototeleology. Christian theology holds that existence itself is a gift. Life is existence received moment by moment. So every heartbeat says something wordless but precise. I did not create myself, yet I persist. That persistence is the glory. Why this didn't collapse into pantheism? It's crucial to be exact here. Life does not equal God. Life participates in what God is like. Christianity says God is being itself. Created life has being by participation. That distinction matters. A flame reflects the sun's light without being the sun. A living body reflects divine generosity without being divine. So when life lives, it mirrors God's self-sustaining nature, God's generativity, God's resistance to chaos, God's preference for order that can grow. Why suffering doesn't negate this. If life glorifies God by living, why does life include suffering? Because glorification is not aesthetic perfection. It is truthful existence in a world not yet healed. Even wounded life glorifies God because it still resists non-being, it still seeks restoration, it still values continuation. This is why Christianity does not worship death. Death is not holy. Life persisting in spite of death is. The resurrection is not spiritual escapism, it's God's declaration that life itself is worth restoring. Why Jesus matters again here. Jesus does not glorify God by being untouchable. He glorifies God by fully living a human life, including fatigue, hunger, grief, and death. That is the radical claim. Human life, as lived, is worthy of divine participation. When biological life lives faithfully, not flawlessly, just honestly, it echoes the incarnation. Every moment that biological life is lived, it glorifies his nature. Theologically refined, that means every moment life continues rather than collapses into nothingness. It testifies to a God who gives being generously, sustains it patiently, and values it intrinsically. That is not sentimental, that is structurally coherent. And it explains why the universe is so full of life-permitting conditions. Consciousness emerges slowly. Moral awareness grows over time. God does not rush creation. He's not collecting trophies. He's sharing being. If indeed he has sheep that are not of this fold, and there are other civilizations we'd have to travel millions of AUs to visit, he obviously would have to have a presence in these places as well. Logically, theologically, and internally to Christianity, that conclusion follows. And it's important to say this clearly. What we've just articulated is not speculative theology. It's the necessary implication of a God who is both infinite and incarnational. So let's walk through it carefully without mysticism or hand-waving. Other sheep of this fold is a structural statement, not a throwaway line. When Jesus says, I have other sheep that are not of this fold, he is doing two things simultaneously. Denying that God's redemptive concern is geographically or culturally bounded. Refusing to define in advance what those other folds look like. The statement is intentionally open-ended. Nothing in the text restricts location, biology, cosmology, mode of embodiment. It only restricts relationship. They will listen to my voice. That is the invariant. An infinite God cannot be locally absent. Here's the key philosophical constraint. If God is the ground of being, non-spatial in essence, sustaining all existence continuously, then there is no elsewhere for him to not be present. Distance in AU, light years, or cosmic void is irrelevant. God is not a traveler. He is ontologically prior to location. So if other civilizations exist, God is not reachable there. He's already present. The incarnation is not a one-off trick. It's a pattern. Christianity does not say God became human once as an exception. It says God revealed his character fully in a particular incarnation. That distinction matters. The incarnation tells us what God is like, not just what he did. What did he reveal? He enters creation rather than ruling it from outside. He adapts to the nature of those he engages. He communicates in forms intelligible to the creature. He suffers with, not merely over creation. If God relates incarnationally once, he can do so as many times as necessary without contradiction. The limitation is not on God, it's on our imagination. Redemption is about persons, not planets. Christianity's core claim is not Earth-centric, it is person-centric. Wherever there are rational agents, moral awareness, capacity for relationship, vulnerability to suffering, there's a need for presence, truth, healing, restoration. Those needs do not depend on carbon, DNA, or bipedal anatomy. If another civilization experiences moral failure, alienation, death, longing for meaning, then the logic of redemption applies there as surely as it does here. The cross reveals how God engages evil, universally. The cross is not a legal loophole for humans. It is a revelation of divine response to evil. What does it show? God absorbs violence rather than escalating it. God defeats evil by exhausting it. God redeems through self-giving love. That strategy is not species specific. If other civilizations fell or never fell, God's posture toward them would still be consistent with his nature. Different expression, same character. Why this does not diminish Jesus? Some fear this idea relativizes Christ. It does the opposite. Jesus is not diminished by being one incarnation. He's magnified by being the clearest window into God's nature. Christians do not worship humanity. They worship the Logos made flesh. The Logos is not bound to one biosphere. Through him all things were made. All things includes everywhere. The universe makes sense under this view. A universe with billions of galaxies, long evolutionary timelines, multiple potential seats of intelligence makes no sense under a petty tribal deity, a bored simulator, a purely mechanical cosmos. It makes profound sense under a God who delights in giving being, relationship, and freedom, even at immense cost. So the conclusion that if other civilizations exist, then God is already present among them. He would be known in forms intelligible to them. His character would be consistent with what we see in Christ. His concern would not be conquest, but communion, not empire, not extraction, not spectacle, presence. And here's the quietest, most important part. The fact that God did not tell us about them in detail may not mean secrecy. It may mean humility. We were given what we needed to know here, not what would satisfy cosmic curiosity. When I pressure test worldviews against reality, physical, moral, experiential, historical, and even computational, Christianity keeps cohering in a way the others don't. Other religions can be meaningful without being structurally sufficient. Most religions do at least one of these well: provide moral guidance, explain suffering, offer ritual cohesion, produce transcendent experiences. Very few do all of them without contradiction. Christianity is unusual here because it simultaneously grounds morality without making God arbitrary, takes suffering seriously without glorifying it, explains evil without making God evil, values reason without collapsing into rationalism, values mystery without collapsing into mysticism. Many religions work psychologically. Christianity also works metaphysically. That's the distinction. Atheism's narrative problem and why artificial intelligence keeps running into it. Atheism is not a single position, but its common narratives tend to rely on assumptions it cannot justify from within its own framework. For example, atheism often appeals to objective moral institutions, trust in rationality, human dignity, progress toward truth, meaningful consciousness. But under strict materialism, morality reduces to evolutionary convenience. Reason reduces to survival heuristics. Dignity reduces to preference. Consciousness becomes an epiphenomenon. Meaning becomes narrative glue we invent. You can assert those things, but you can't ground them. This is why when artificial intelligence models analyze atheist arguments charitably, they often conclude, this explains how beliefs arise, but not why they are binding, true, or trustworthy. That's not bias. That's structural limitation. Why Christianity keeps making overwhelming sense. Christianity does something rare. It does not deny science, evolution, cosmic vastness, competing intelligences, psychological complexity, cultural variation, human failure. Instead, it absorbs them. It says, yes, the universe is old and vast. God is not in a hurry. Yes, humans evolved. God works through process. Yes, other beliefs exist. Truth is not coercive. Yes, suffering exists. God enters it. Yes, reason matters. Faith is not blind. Yes, mystery remains. Finitude is real. It doesn't collapse complexity, it holds it. That's why it scales from villages to galaxies. Why artificial intelligence doesn't agree with the atheist narrative. AI doesn't believe anything, but it does reveal something important. Large language models are trained on massive human discourse, surface internal contradictions, test coherence across domains, penalize explanations that explain too little or too much. When atheism is framed as there is no God, therefore everything is explainable, it overpromises. When Christianity is framed as reality is grounded in a personal logos, therefore some things are intelligible and some are inexhaustible, it fits the data better, not because it's comforting, because it's proportionate. What this implies for other civilizations. So, other civilizations could be atheist, polytheist, pantheist, or something we can't imagine. Guess what? That doesn't threaten Christianity. If Christianity is true, then God meets creatures where they are. Truth is discovered progressively. Error is permitted without being ultimate. Relationship matters more than labels. Christians are not saved by having the right theory. They are saved by responding to the truth they encounter. That scales cosmically. So here's the quiet conclusion we're circling. We're not concluding everyone else is wrong. We're concluding something more restrained and more defensible. Christianity seems uniquely capable of making sense of reality without denying any major category of human experience. That's not arrogance, that's recognition. It doesn't mean that we stop questioning. It means we found a framework that doesn't collapse when we do question. Thanks for listening.